2:00. All right. If anybody's on, I can't really tell if anybody's on. We're just trying to get through some technical issues. There you go, Jay. You were kind of pixelating there for a minute.
Yeah.
So just seeing, I don't know if anybody's on yet. Let's see. Oh, what's this? Unread message.
My name.
Okay. Hi, Jennifer. Danielle from Venice. Danielle's tied up. Hi, Jennifer. Okay, cool. I'm glad you can hear. We're just going to wait on a couple people to get in, and we're super stoked. So thanks for joining. I think some people were having some issues with a link. Did your link work okay, Jennifer? Obviously, because you're in, right? So we're just waiting on Dina to get in and a few more people. You know, I was also trying to get this on. I'd set a reminder to put this on Clubhouse, but I think on Clubhouse you have to interact.
Well, we'll be interacting for both speakers.
Yeah. Let's see. Let me try to turn it on.
I have found Clubhouse to be a pretty interesting place.
It is. But it's not, I don't need another. I think it'll be a great new place to communicate.
Yeah.
Someone just said, I hope this presentation is going to be better than Jay's golf swing.
Did you see my golf swing a second ago?
Already.
Hold on, man. I got to do it again. So, you know, I got work to do.
Yeah. At least you're playing.
Oh, I haven't played. I haven't played in so long, man. So before everybody gets on, like I just had a rotator cuff surgery December 4th.
That's right. How are you feeling?
So good, man. Really good. I feel lucky that I've gotten through it really well. A lot of people really struggle. So for some reason, it's been no big deal for me. So I feel grateful.
Cool. Well, it looks like we have some people on. I just got to send one more person the link. Sorry about that. I know everyone's got a super busy schedule. We send Jeff this link and we'll get going. Hopefully you guys all got to see Jay swing there and didn't mean it. All right, so Dina's in. Everyone else, if you could just let us know that you can hear, that you're on, and you can see us, that'd be awesome. But thank you again, man. I can't believe it's over. This month is gone. Today, just a couple more days to the end of the month, and we're ready to rock and roll. And I am super stoked, man. I couldn't start the new year without having my friend. I mean, seriously, you are a friend. I couldn't wait. You know, Jay and I have known each other for over a decade. We've had amazing talks, both as colleagues and on a personal, political, spiritual level. Like, he's who I go to very often. And I couldn't wait to share him in the new year with you, with everything that he's done for other companies, for other law firms, coaching, just helping people hire the right people. So we're going to learn a ton of information. So let me just give him the awesome intro that he deserves. So let me welcome my friend and colleague, Jay Henderson, who is a performance and leadership expert, speaker, and the author of The Ultimate Guide to Hiring Superstars. That's exactly what everybody on here wants, right? We all want to hire superstars in any small business. He is also the creator of the five shifts to greater profits, a proven method that accelerates any business result you seek. Jay's one of the most sought after leadership performance consultants and hiring experts in the country, regularly, last 2 years ago, regularly speaking at live conferences and now virtual conferences. So we're very lucky to have him, different conventions for business leaders all over the country. This is the most impressive. Training under Stephen Covey at an early age in his career after his father giving him a buck. And we'll learn more about that story a little further because I'm going to dive deep into it. You got to know the psychology behind of why Jay does what he does. So training under Steve Covey for years and helping develop the 7 Habits of Highly Effective Athletes with Wayne Carpenter, right? Was that with Wayne or with Steve? Also working with
actually
Wayne
another guy.
Yeah, the Wayne Carpenter. There's another guy too?
Well, I'll tell you more maybe later.
Yeah. And so, Wayne Carpenter was a leadership trailblazer, the genius who redesigned and refined computerized human performance system that measures how people think and make decisions. And most importantly, one of the most objective and ones currently around. So please welcome with a virtual hand for our friend Jay Henderson, who is here to be with us. All right, Jay.
Thank you.
Just tell us a little bit about you, and then we'll jump in, and we'll leave some time for everyone at the end to ask some questions, because I know you're going to have a ton of questions, and I think Jay's going to be giving away 3 awesome products too. So we're super stoked.
Yeah. Hey, I'm impressed with those things. I didn't give you all that stuff. So
I had to go in looking for it.
Like, good job, man, on all that stuff that you had to say. And that part about, yeah, well, thank you. But there's a guy, my boss at Covey, his name was Dick Roth. And Dick won a silver medal in the 1964 Olympics. Wow. This is obviously going back. Yeah, he was a swimmer. And he and I we found each other both really into sports psychology. And so we started to create, with Stephen Covey's permission, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective Athletes. And that was really a fun venture. But I moved on before, and Dick, he moved also, and I moved. And so anyway, there's more behind that story. So, but what do you want to know?
I want all the details. Who you are, what got you into the business. I want to hear the story quick story about how your dad got you involved, your first Steve Covey book, and then I'll jump in with some questions. But just tell me a little bit about you and tell the audience about you, why you do what you do.
Right on, thank you. So my dad was a radio personality in Detroit for 25 years. He was what we, I guess, know as a disc jockey, right? And he happened to be invited and asked to MC, like he used to MC bands in Detroit. Like, I mean, Alice Cooper, Chicago, everybody you can imagine from the 70s rock and roll period. He MC'd all those people, and we got to go into all those concerts. It was a blast. But he was also asked one time to MC Stephen R. Covey at a big speech that he was doing. So my dad met Stephen, and then he sent me the audio tapes to the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which I devoured. Really was into, just loved it. And then one day, he and I, a few years later, we were walking through this place called the Jacksonville Landing in Jacksonville, Florida. We were walking through there together. It's like a mall, an outdoor sort of mall, and right on the river there. And we were walking by a bookstore. He looked in the bookstore and he saw this book that said 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So he said, "Hey, check it out." And he grabbed a couple of them and he gave me a copy, of course. And so I read that book till it was tattered and torn. For some reason, it really resonated with me. I really enjoyed it. I liked reading it. And so then, I don't know, it was maybe a year later, I decided to go to work for Stephen Covey. And, we have these moments in life that are kind of cathartic. And I was in my bedroom, and I was in a big transition in my life. I had already moved out. I had already lived on my own, but I was home for a short time. And then I had this really strong sort of like epiphany experience. I don't know what you want to call it. But I walked up to my dad that night. I said, "Hey, I know what I'm going to do." And he said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "I'm going to go to work for Stephen Covey." And he said, "Well, then Stephen Covey," I was in Raleigh, North Carolina, where I am today. And back in that time. And my dad said, "Well, when are you going to leave? And when are you going to go?" And I said, "Tomorrow morning." And Covey was in Utah.
Right.
So that night I packed up my stuff. I packed up my car. I jumped in the car. I drove across the country. I knew one girl that lived there. I called her from a payphone. This is a while ago.
You're like, what's a payphone?
Payphone, what's payphone? So anyway, I called her, and she said, "Hey, just when you get to town, let me know." And I got a place to stay. And 3 months later, I was working at the Covey Leadership Center. And the growth trajectory of Covey at the time was like insane. I mean, it became the #1 training company in the world at one time. And Covey's book, 7 Habits, sold eventually 75 million copies in something like 40 languages around the world. So that's how I ended up there. And that was a great experience and an amazing opportunity to cut my teeth with major corporate clients around the country and to learned a lot. So that's how that happened.
That's awesome. Just real quick on that story, because you missed the best part. And when I read this was, you drove to Utah, showed up, you happened to have a suit, walked into Covey's office and said, I'm here for the job. And the receptionist, I said, I guess said, I'm like, did you read our ad? And you're like, no, I didn't know there was an ad. I just kind of showed up and hoped you had a position. And then how soon after that were you working?
Yeah, so this is another crazy thing, man. I was driving down the road. I was in a suit, and I actually saw this building that I knew was a Covey building. It didn't have big signs. This is early in Covey's years when they had offices scattered around the city. And so I had this feeling to pull over and walk in there. So I walked in there. There was a lady standing there. Her name was Susan Tipton. And she said, "Hi, can I help you?" And I said, "Hello, I'm here to interview for a job." And she said, "Okay, did you bring your resume?" And I said, "No, I don't happen to have a resume. I didn't even know you were looking." She said, "I just had my last interview. Come on in." And so I went in and she hired me. That was awesome.
So
crazy. Yeah.
Tell us for those of you who haven't read any Steve Covey books or listened to the audios, what's his background? What's he teach? And then also, so we can start our questions, what is a performance expert? And you can decide whether you want to start with that and then go into that, or, freely answer that question.
Yeah. Stephen Covey was an organizational behavior PhD who taught organizational behavior at Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah. And he had written books already even in his early days. He had a knack for leadership. He understood it. He ended up getting a PhD, ended up being a professor. Interesting story. He wrote the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and he was rejected by a lot of publishers. Nobody was going to publish the book. He literally threw it in the trash, and he said, "I'll never touch it again." And there was a guy there by the name of Bill. His last name's escaping me. And Bill pulled the book out of the trash, and he gave the book to Sandra Merrill, who Covey knew, who ghost wrote and rewrote the book. And Bill sent it to publishers without Stephen knowing it, and Simon & Schuster picked it up.
Wow.
Pretty wild story. Yeah, wild story. So it's kind of a good lesson in never give up and things like that, right? But so he did his doctoral dissertation by studying 200 years of success literature. And then he wrote the 7 Habits by saying, these are the 7 key principles that I found from all the literature that was out there from the success history. I've got that dissertation, by the way. I stole it out of his office, grabbed a copy. But anyway, and that's how he got into that, and that's how he did that. So he was teaching the 7 Habits in classes as a professor for years before he wrote the book. But a performance expert is someone who knows how to get performance out of people. Everyone has talent. The problem is that everybody gets in their own way, and they restrict themselves with natural biases or all kinds of other things that we go through in life that get in the way of our being able to perform at our greatest ability. And then from the standpoint of a leader being a performance expert, there's a great understanding of human performance and what causes people to perform at a high level and what keeps people from performing at a high level. And as we get in our own way, and we don't always know how to get out of our own way. And then as bosses, we inadvertently, even when we're trying to be great leaders, we inadvertently get in the way of our team members' performance capacity and block it. And so, I think, like I said, I studied sports psychology. So how I got into this whole thing So my dad gave me the book, right? Well, there was another experience that we had that together where that I was talking about how I was in this transition and I was back in Raleigh at my parents' home and for between school and what have you. And so my dad came up to me one day and he goes, "Hey, they're playing the Masters golf tournament down in Augusta. Do you want to go?" And I was like, "Heck yeah, let's go, man." So we jumped in the car and we drove 4 hours to Augusta, Georgia from Raleigh. And we got a shoddy hotel because you can't find anything else. It's totally packed and, houses are rented and nobody can find a hotel. But it was a practice round is all it was. We didn't even get into the tournament. The tournaments were pre-sold out. Well, anyway, we went in there and I watched the Masters. We walked around all day. It was a phenomenal experience. That place is amazing. Well, on the way home, on the drive home, my dad started asking me all these questions. He's a pretty successful person in his own right, and I'm grateful to have really good parents who are pretty sharp people, and very grateful for that blessing. And anyway, long story short, he started asking me all these questions about what I wanted to do with myself, and I'm grateful because I really didn't know. I was struggling with that. And ultimately, he said to me, "Why don't you become a sports psychologist?" And I was like, "Well, what's a sports psychologist?" And then I started studying what is sports psychology and all this kind of thing. And that is how I ended up, learning about people and performance. It came really from sports psych, because you can have all the organizational behavior. It's like Stephen Covey himself even said, organizations aren't about organizations; they're about people.
Right.
Organizational, performance is people, right? So, yeah, that's how I got into all that, and love it. Love the stuff.
Wow. Well, that's awesome. So we know how you got your start.
Yeah.
Tell me why a firm or business would hire you. Why would they hire a performance expert? How can you help? And you kind of touched on that a little bit, but specifically, how would you help an organization like mine or a law firm?
So what I've found is that, how I would help is through having conversations, just like any boss would do with an employee. There's a new book out. I haven't read it yet, but I love the title. It's called Leadership is Language. And I've been saying that for a while because that's what it comes down to. It ultimately comes down to, how do you communicate the vision? How do you communicate it in a group? How do you communicate it one-on-one? And how do you do that in a way where you don't get in the way, but you actually access performance, like I said earlier. So how I would help would be a couple of ways. I have executive clients that I coach one-on-one, and we talk a couple of times a month on the phone, depending on what they want to do. We get into all kinds of stuff, their goals, their business, what they're doing, how things are going now. And ultimately it comes down to, closing the gap between what you want and where you are now. And that's where we get in our own way. It's not always easy for us to close the gap for ourselves. So through conversation, we employ, conversation, and we employ principles. So how do we, I want to do this. Okay, great. What team, what in your organization, what team in your law firm would help you achieve that? Is this a medical records team? Is it a summary team? Is it the lawyers, and the demand process? Where is it in your firm where's the block? Where's the bottleneck? What's getting in the way? So, and then we kind of attack that and employ the principles, and things happen.
So when you're talking to a law firm, is it always a different goal that they want to reach in a different type of team, or have you seen that there's a common denominator for it all?
So there's both, actually. There's usually all kinds of different things we want to attack. Is it converting more of the leads that we're getting in the intake team? Is it getting our medical records in a personal injury firm completed faster, more accurately? Is it increasing our customer service scores if we have an index and we're measuring it, which we should be? Is it minimizing loss in some way? Is it, so it can be either let's grow X or let's minimize Y. So and it can be all over the map in all the different departments. And is it case record? What is it? So and then the other part is that it can be one thing that everybody focuses on that makes a difference and makes the greatest impact.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What provoked you to write the Ultimate Small Business Guide to Hiring Superstars?
So when I left,
there had to be a need, right? Obviously, you saw a gap, something was missing.
Yeah. Well, what happened is, I sort of tripped into the hiring thing. I was really into the sports psych piece. And then that led me from Covey Leadership Center to another company that was like 5 miles away that I learned was teaching sports psychology principles to business leaders and managers. And they were teaching business leaders and managers how to coach other people to higher performance using sports psychology principles. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's unbelievable, right? Right down the road. It's kind of like what I always wanted to do. So I went ahead and went over there. And when I went there, they had me complete this really bizarre exercise, which you, Alex, have completed, right?
I love it.
And yeah. And they had me
And it helped me tremendously. Uh-huh.
Go ahead. What? And
it helped me tremendously. So go on. Sorry.
Oh, good, good. I never got paid by you for that, by the way. So,
Yvette's going to be taking hers finally.
Good, good. So, but I took this weird exercise, and then I went into my second interview, and the CEO, he knew me like the back of his hand, and it blew me away. And he was asking me questions that were so in my world that, you feel like I hate to give you this reference, but I'll never forget when I was a little kid watching the Three Stooges, and there was this one scene where one of the guys put a nail in the shoe of the other guy, and he was trying to run away, but he couldn't go, and he had nowhere to go. He couldn't hide. He couldn't run because there was this nail in his shoe, Anyway, that's how I felt in this job interview. This guy had questions for me that were revealing. Like, I was like, yeah, that's true of me. I'm wondering, are you still going to hire me, kind of thing. So I got that job, and 3 months later, the guy who invented that exercise came out to Utah, and he trained our company in how to read the science. And then I'll just briefly, about a year later, I had been dating this girl. Almost hate to admit this. I think I've told the story before. But about a year later, I actually called Wayne, the guru you mentioned earlier, Wayne Carpenter. And I said, hey, there's this girl I'm dating. He goes, I'll do it. Like, he knew immediately what I was after, So she took the profile, and back then it was on paper, so you had to fax it. So I literally walked over, faxed it to him. Before I got back to my office, the phone was ringing on my desk. So I picked up the phone, and it was him. And I answered the phone, and he said, okay, here's what you're experiencing. And he told me what he revealed. I already knew what I was experiencing, but the fact that he knew what I was experiencing, like he was me, it just absolutely, it blew my mind. And then he said, and here's what she's experiencing. Here's how this is going for her. And then he said all this stuff. Well, anyway, man, I hung up from that call, and I was like, I am going to own this thing. Because remember, I was like, before, when my dad was like, hey, why don't you try sports psychology? And then I started studying it, and then I ended up at Covey, and we were doing the 7 Habits of Highly Effective Athletes and whatnot. I was so into how do people learn, and how do they translate that learning into performance? How do champions become super great? And I was really into that stuff. So when I saw what this guy knew about me and about that girl, it absolutely floored me. And in life, if you can make a decision that is emotionally charged, like a real, sincere, authentic, emotional decision, your subconscious mind, which is a genius, everyone on the call, every person anywhere, some might argue, but they have a genius within them. And when you're subconscious, the emotion is the gateway from the conscious mind to the subconscious mind. So I made this decision, I am going to own this profile. And I don't know, I just said that out loud. And I didn't even touch it for 10 years. But 10 years later, I learned from Wayne that he had these interview guides. The profile was translated into these interview guides on leadership, management, customer service, sales, etc. And when I found out, oh my gosh, as accurate as this is, and as detailed as it is, and it's a risk analysis, which you need for hiring. It's great to have other tools like DISC, Colby, Myers-Briggs, StrengthsFinder Index, Hogan, whatever. I mean, I like all of them. If they're validated to measure what they say they measure, great. But can you really use it for hiring? Well, long story short, to answer your question, I got into hiring. I sort of became an accidental consultant around hiring because I could advise owners, should you hire this person, should you not? If you should, why? If you should not, why? If you do hire them, what do you do with them? And then 2 or 3 years later, I had learned so much about hiring that I put a system together and then decided to write the book. So that's how all that came about.
Yeah, and I love that part of it. And I know you've, evolved into different products and services, one of them being, the lawyer and high-end business coaching program. But can we dive a little deeper into this one? Like, what do you see? Like if you were to take on high level, you would take on a lawyer and his firm and do coaching. But if you were to break it down and fall into those groups and doing these tests, what would that look like for a firm? Because I know that's huge, right? I think that's something we're finally considering now that we've had a little turnover and we're trying to build special teams that we want to do for ourselves, right? Like we have a special project coming along, about our software system. So I want to make the right decision on building those special teams for those projects. So it's something that's going to be talking to you about. But like, someone like Sandy who's on, I know she's got a nice firm out of Vegas. She'd probably have some interest in learning, like, building those rock stars. And she's one of those people that has, I hope it's okay to say it, Sandy, you're on there. In trying to investigate and going to a four-day work week, trying to build their teams, and she's really involved in building those teams. Our partner, Jason Hennessy, I know is big on culture and hiring the right teams. So, what does that look like? What does that structure look like? What would the process look like, and what you've seen as far as the benefit?
Well, so basically I get on the phone with the owner and they tell me what it is they're looking for and trying to achieve and what they want. And because the reports are broken down by competency into either a leader, manager, sales, what have you, right? I give logins and passwords to the firm owner or hiring manager, who will then take this login and email it to a job candidate and say, as part of our process, everyone completes this 15-minute exercise. So they go online, they take it. It takes, again, 15 minutes. And then within 2 or 3 minutes, the firm receives a report on that job candidate. And the report lays out strengths and development areas. But the key part to begin with are the development areas. Again, everyone has talent, but the challenge is they get in their own way by having blocks in their natural way they see things. And that's all of us, right?
Right.
But when we're hiring, we want to know more than, hey, they're a high D and a high I and they're a low S and a low C. I'm talking about the disc profile. It's good to know that stuff. Great to know it, but we need to know more. We want to know what's their emotional control? What's their problem-solving ability? How good is their judgment? Where are the biases focused? What will they see and what will they naturally miss? And so many other things that when we know those things, now we can really make a powerful decision about who we're bringing in. Because unfortunately, it turns out, and I've been doing this about 20 some years, it turns out that it's easier to identify who will not work out than it is to identify who will work out.
Right.
But that's the key. Yeah. But that's the key thing we want to know at the beginning of this process. If they're not going to work out and we sort of eliminate that part of the process, then we're betting, way better percentages on who will work out. So if I say, I would hire this person, the judgment's great, they focus on the right stuff, they've got the ability, does that mean they're going to be a performance, genius and that they'll fit perfectly in every way? Of course not. There's no way. People are too complex. So, one key element, so okay, I don't want to go too far down the road. I think you asked me, what's the process, right? So I give the login, the owner gives it to a candidate, they take it, you get a report, and it really tells you straight up what your risk is in hiring this person.
At what age is the employer giving it to the candidate? Like maybe after interview 1 or 2 or something like that? Like they got to become someone, you sort through the people you want to hire, and then you get them in and they're like, all right, I'm interested in these 2 or 3 people. Will you take this test, right? So that kind of, at what process? Yeah.
Well, I advise my clients to have multiple interviews. And, we're all short on time. Nobody loves hiring. Not too many people love interviewing. It's really difficult to know who the person really is. They can say whatever they want.
Right.
And so my recommendation is that we do a phone interview, 10 minutes, you check the resumes, get all that straight, do a 10-minute phone interview, do a live interview. You're whittling down the stack of resumes, right, and do a live interview. You make that short. Some people do 4-hour interviews. I don't agree with that. I mean, maybe later, maybe down the road a little further, fine. But in Japan, when they're hiring a CEO in a major corporation, or I mean, when they're hiring someone at a high level in a major corporation, the CEO goes into their home and has dinner with them in their home. So, but point is, you do a couple interviews, and if you whittle it down, at that point you can decide, and you might have other parts of your process, and you should, like grammar tests, spelling tests, maybe IQ tests, background checks. And people are more used today to being tested than they've ever been before. They're used to it. So don't be shy and bashful about that. Your goal when you're hiring is to learn everything you possibly can about the person. You're gathering data and you're putting it all in a bucket. That's what you're going to do. So you do everything you possibly can, but you have a couple interviews, and then if you whittle it, the process down enough, you can decide, okay, I want to know, like what I say to my clients, and it depends on their cost-benefit ratio and how much money they, like if I'm saying I'm $1,000 an hour, I don't want to spend an hour. If I'm making $1,000 an hour, I don't want to spend an hour interviewing people.
Right.
So what can I do to offset that? So I might spend $900 to get so many profiles to test so many people. But anyway, at that point, you whittle it down, you prioritize, and you make a decision about who you think you'd like to hire. And at that point, with what I do, you're going to want to run this exercise and find out all the great stuff about them, but especially the problems that they might bring into your practice and probably will bring into your practice.
Awesome. Awesome. That kind of leads me to my new question. What significant changes, if any, do you see in hiring now post or during COVID?
Well, it's weirder right now. It's weird. So when COVID first hit, everybody stopped hiring, of course. And then everybody started hiring again, and they just cranked right back up into it. And then, so a lot of people were able to they had better pickings, because a lot of people had been let go and furloughed and what have you. So they had greater ability to choose people. Right now, it's kind of interesting. There's a lot of people available, but the remote nature of work today has changed everything a lot. And in fact, made what I do a lot more important, actually, because for instance, this one client of mine just hired somebody, and this person is extraordinarily talented graphic design and internet digital marketing guru for their business. Big business most people would know of. And the hiring manager, I said, yeah, I'd hire this person, be aware of X, Y, and Z. Well, she called me and said, man, I'm really struggling. This guy, he's phenomenal at his work, but he's too distracted, which I had told her he would be. Then I find out, I asked her, and yes, he was working remote. This guy's got 4 kids at home, young kids. So he's working at home. He's got 4 young kids there. He's already the kind of guy who gets distracted easily anyway. And he's the kind of guy who'd rather be with his family than working. So just, knowing these things is really a critical element of it. And then when it comes to Zoom and interviewing and things like that, I think that's even better. Not better than being in person, but it's great to be able to have those first couple interviews maybe by Zoom. Because today in person, everybody feels like they have to wear a mask. You can only see half the face, and the face is important. I don't know. So not a lot of empirical data that I just gave you there, but it's different. And I think a lot of my clients are finding it harder to find good people right now. And I can't put my finger on exactly why specifically.
So would you say it's the system works a lot of the times, like you said earlier, for finding the people you don't want to hire, right? Like avoiding you of making that big mistake, and then trickling down to hopefully finding, who personality-wise you might have not thought was the right person, but on paper actually will be the right person for you.
Yes. I had a girl come up to me, a woman, I guess a young woman, at a conference one time, and she started crying. And I was like, and I didn't know who she was. She wasn't a client. So I was a little freaked out by that. And she said, I just want to thank you because I had an extremely rough upbringing. I didn't have a high school degree. I had a really difficult time finding a job. And I went to this law firm. She walked into a law firm, and they, had a feeling about her. They liked her. So they ran the profile on her, and I told them to hire her. And she felt like I had no opportunities. And so to your point about finding people who you might not have thought would work out well, will work out well. So Hilton Corporation, we've been doing profiles for them, measuring people all over the world for the last, I guess, 15 years. And we did empirical benchmark studies on a couple of different roles for them. So we would measure like 500 people and crunch the numbers and find out exactly who we believe would work in the role and who we believe would not work in the role. And so they told us they were blocking 2.5 out of every 10 bad hires using a very popular tool that everybody knows about, a personality profile. Mm-hmm. And then when we came along, they started blocking 8 out of every 10, and then identifying 8 and 9 out of 10. And they measured this. The VP of HR worldwide at Hilton measured this, and they were hiring in Tokyo, New York, Vegas, Hawaii, another place. My point in bringing that up is the one thing they said is, we are hiring people we never would have hired before, and we're not hiring people that we would have hired before. And their turnover dropped like 130% in a year. It took a while because they said, we found out our managers weren't going by the results. Well, once we got them on board, it just totally changed. And I had a law firm say to me about 2 years ago, they said, Jay, we don't hit it perfectly right every single time with what you do, but our culture is better than it's ever been before. So the point is, even if the profile's accurate, which I'm not argumentative about these things and I'm not dogmatic about my stuff, right? I'm not married to it so much, but it's eerily accurate. It's pretty scary. But even if it is accurate, what I don't know is who's going to be leading that person. I don't always know that. I don't always know the culture. I don't always know every detail about the role. So there's things we're going to miss. So without empirical benchmark data, I can be accurate about 70% of the time. And I'm not afraid to say that because most people, you can flip a quarter and heads or tails and you're right, maybe 50% of the time. but most people, nobody can know what to do. They don't know what else to do. And right. what I have is an objective mathematical measure of everything that happens before a decision has been made. And that's really key because all the other tools out there, which I like them all, as I said, they measure subjectively after a decision has been made. And there's big, huge differences in those couple of elements. But
yeah, when I did my profile, and this was me just wanting to learn about myself and how I was doing, because there was a lot of things that I was doing that cost me money instead of hiring an assistant or someone that would help, right? It was like I was so bent on I have to learn everything. I want to figure it out. I want to save the money on doing it, but then realize that not only would I have this whole list of ideas of things to do, but I would never execute them because they weren't my personality, right? So your suggestion was, look, hey, you're probably going to have to hire an assistant or get somebody. And finally, my life changed, right? The business started growing. Like I was able to put the things that I didn't know how to do, I knew about, but I didn't have to learn them and move aside. So you kind of gave me two examples. One, in error, and thanks to you, right? And I can't wait to jump on the new project. But like, give us an example of maybe like a law firm or something that's used, and you kind of did, right? Like, he said, you're probably about 70%. It's not always accurate, but when it is, it's on. What's some of the success with that, and then also touch on why hiring the right team helps gauge and success and failures of the firm, and some feedback that you've so why is hiring the right team so under and overlooked when firms and companies gauge their success and failures?
So because we don't know what to do really when we're hiring. What's that? Yeah, understated. Yeah, because we really sort of don't know. Most people don't know how to interview, and they can't read minds. So, and in golf, this is going to sound weird. I was swinging a golf club a minute ago, but in golf, if you're in a golf tournament, the person who wins the tournament is the one who swings the golf club the fastest and the most accurately the most often. They're the one that wins. In business, it's decisions. We make the fastest, most accurate decisions, we win. That's how that works, right? Every employee It's their decision capacity or judgment to perform and make great decisions and get things done. So while if the profile's accurate, I don't know other things, that's why it's at 75%. I think the profile is always accurate, by the way, pretty much, unless you call me and I look at the details. But because people aren't great at hiring and they don't know how to read minds, for instance, you can't really know. So people are just doing their best and they're using their gut instincts. You got to process, like do a couple of interviews, ask these kinds of questions, do behavioral interview questions, which I agree with, but everybody thinks that past behavior equals future behavior. And it does, but you don't know why that behavior was the way it was when you're doing the interview behavior thing. So, and then little tip on the intuition, gut instincts part. If your gut says do hire that person, don't listen to that. And that doesn't mean don't hire them. I just mean by that, keep looking at them. Try to be objective if you can. If your gut tells you don't hire that person, you should listen to that. Okay. It's my experience.
Wrong.
Yeah. Because your gut's going to be like, if your gut's telling you something's wrong, you should listen to that.
Yeah.
By my experience, most of my clients say, I knew it. I spent the money to buy the profile and get on the phone with you, but I knew that. So, yeah, I think I might be missing another part of your question. Like, they overlook it. It's expensive to hire the wrong people. It's insanely expensive to bring people on, train them, and lose them, and bring them on, train them, lose them, bring them on, train them. And they affect the culture. They affect other people. So I like 3 Ps. I call it 3 Ps. Protect the business. That's your first step when you're hiring. Think of it as protection. You market working for your business like you sell anything else. Like you're trying to get people in the door. But once they do come in the door, now your wall goes up and you become very protective of your business. And people have to absolutely prove to you that they are stellar. And you can't be weak about it because it costs too much and it's too much of a heartache and pain to hire the wrong people, right? Especially the smaller the business is, the more impact it has. Their mistakes don't get hidden.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
I think Dean had posted something with like anywhere from 15 to 56 grand to make a bad hire.
Yeah, and if it's a sales role, it's like 150 grand.
Wow.
Because you got to think about the loss of what could have been.
Right.
You've got somebody in there that can sell compared to someone who can't, and the loss. Right. Yeah. So anyway, but it can be very, very expensive. So. But people don't know. So quick experience. I was given a presentation one time, and I used to ask this question all the time. How many of you are PhDs in behavioral psychology? My point being, you're able to read people better than others, right? And nobody would ever raise their hand, of course. I'm just making a point. You're not a PhD in this stuff. How do you know who to hire? Well, one time this lady raised her hand. And I said, you're a PhD in behavioral psych? And she goes, yeah. And it turns out, backfire on my little point there. But anyway, it turns out that she had been asking the most questions about how to interview and how to hire, which makes sense because she was so into that kind of thing, right? As a behavioral psychologist. But she didn't even know how to hire people any better than anybody else. And is the point, right? And in fact, I can't even read people without the profile. And I don't even try. Like, I don't go to parties and walk around and be like, this person's personality, you know what I mean? Because, I want to have fun at the party. But anyway, instead of crash the party. There's that guy who reads minds. I don't like this guy.
But so out of curiosity, are there like 3 or 5 questions you could be asking someone to kind of get a quick personality profile? Just like,
totally
hey,
honest.
I want to have a root beer with this guy or not?
Yeah, totally seriously. No, I don't know. There probably are people who are good at that and they have learned some stuff and they do these cold readings, they call them, and they can sort of bucket people into different personality types and what have you. I cannot do that. I don't know how to do that. But if somebody takes my profile, I'll know more about them than their mother does. And I can predict performance. Predict it accurately. It's pretty crazy.
Very cool. Well, I have a few more questions, but I want to open it up because we have 15 minutes left. I want to open it up to the audience to see if they have any questions so they can start just putting them in the chat. and I'll proceed with mine. So any questions that you guys have for Jay or myself, go ahead and drop them in there while I ask a couple more questions. So here's a good one. What if a firm or business, and you might have touched on this, but more specifically, what if a firm or business has talented employees, but the owner boss doesn't know how to motivate them and maximize their potential and productivity?
Yeah, or worse, and it doesn't have to be a bad thing. It sounds judgmental. Or they don't want to coach people, which is perfectly fine.
Right.
Some owners are like, I don't even want to deal with these people.
Right.
Like, let's hire good people and I don't have to deal with it, right? If they don't know how to do it, get somebody who does. If they don't want to do it, get somebody who can or will or wants to. That's one thing you can do. You can take coaching courses. I think a lot of people have the attitude like they're either going to perform or they're not, and I'll just go through the cost of dealing with it and call that normal part of business. This is one of the problems. You own a law firm and you're successful and you're making a lot of money, or at minimum doing well, and you're feeding your family, and why take the extra step to do better? Some people are just way too tired. They're like, man, I've been working. I don't,
right.
So they're not maximizing. So and that's okay, that's their choice, but I routinely, easily find about 30% let me put it this way. I'll go into a practice and we'll implement some strategies to drive greater performance. And I've seen, and you asked about a case study earlier, but I saw one client, literally, they went in one team, they were doing medical records, productivity, and they tracked it, not me. Productivity increased 17% from February to March over previous numbers. So they had a 17% increase in performance.
Wow.
The next month, it was 171% increase in productivity over January. The next month was 315% increase. So here's my point. The point is that there is so much waste going on in our firms that it's astounding, like crazy. And it's not hard to make the tweaks at all. It's actually quite simple to make the tweaks that make the changes that bring the greatest benefit. They had a 47.7% increase in disbursements in 7 months. So the cash flow just took off like a rocket ship, and they were making a lot more money because they were creating a lot more speed with the cases.
Wow. So once they did the test and the teams went through it, did they restructure, and this is how they got more productivity out of it?
Good question. It wasn't even the profiles. They already had the team in place. They had already hired these people sometime earlier. What we did is, see, the big problem, everybody has more potential than they're currently utilizing.
Mm-hmm.
And their potential is blocked by interference, which is one word that talks about everything that gets in the way, anything that can get in the way. We all deal with it. This is one of the biggest things that affects our performance, is that we're distracted and we're unfocused because there's too much interference going on. So if you can reduce interference, you can increase focus. And if you can increase focus, just everything changes like boom, like overnight. So what we do is we set we look at the team and the organization and what they're trying to achieve as a team. And then we pick one goal that is an impact goal.
Right.
That is the most important thing that we're trying to achieve, I'm sorry, that's wrong language. It's not the most important thing. It's the thing that'll have the greatest impact on the firm. And then there's a way to launch that goal with the team a certain way. You launch it with the team. So you create one clear goal, which everybody knows about that. Yeah, one goal. I mean, research, there's statistics on this. If you have one goal, your chances of hitting it are very, very high. If you have 10 goals, good luck hitting any of them. So, but most people, you ask, how many priorities do you have? They're like, yeah, 10, 8, 5, we're working on all these different projects. Well, anyway, so the second thing you do is, after the one clear goal, is you do clear steps. Because you got to get the team members super clear and committed by choice. Everybody wants accountability. Where do you get accountability from? Ownership. Where do you get ownership from? Choice. How do you get them to choose? So there's a process and a skill set around coaching and launching high level goals with certain teams. Then the next thing is feedback loops. Okay. So a quick example, I don't know if there's questions, but quick example is if you're on a golf course, we'll use golf since Susan was laughing at my golf swing. If we're on a golf course, you know, and I'm standing in the fairway and I look out at the green, there's a flag in the hole on the green, and that's my target. I got one target. When I hit the ball at that flag, if my ball goes dead left away from or right or nowhere near the flag, I get immediate feedback about my performance. Then I can adjust things. But if I don't have any feedback, I don't know what to adjust. And most people in organizations suffer from anonymity, meaning their work product, they don't really know deeply how it specifically connects to the success of the organization. And then they feel like they're not a part of the organization. They just feel like I'm just stamping widgets all day.
Right.
You see? So if you got a clear goal, clear steps, people have chosen those steps, they've committed to those steps, and then feedback the right way, you put feedback loops in process, man, it just, boom, like it's like crazy, you know? So, you know, you made 100,000 last year of profitability. Well, what if you could have made 150,000 or 175,000? Just simply by implementing and sticking to a simple process that hits the psychological triggers that make the biggest difference with people. I kind of went off a little on a tangent there, but is that?
No, I love that. And I wish we had every time you said something cool, it would just show up on the screen. So I like it when you started off and the golf analogy was awesome. But you know, the process really looked nice. I think you did a great job illustrating that, right? You have a goal. The only way you have a goal is if you made a choice, right? Can you repeat those points again? Because I think that's one of the greatest takeaways here, so people can envision it. Because while you were talking, I was envisioning it. Dina's DMing me and saying, "Don't worry, I'll clip it and edit it so we can use it." But do me a favor and repeat that, because that was so perfect, and I think everyone in the audience will get a benefit and realize, you know, actually start visualize how they can use it internally.
I don't remember what I said, Alex.
Oh my gosh, it was so good.
I'm just kidding. So you set a clear goal, and then what your question was specifically about accountability. So if you want accountability, how do you get accountability? Accountability comes from ownership. You know, I mean, you can carrot and stick people, which means, you know, the carrot is you can incentivize them. Right. Yeah. You can incentivize them more money, which doesn't motivate people, by the way. A little bit maybe it does. If they're drowning, more money is going to motivate them. But you can incentivize them, or you can whip them with the stick, right? So, but the better way is you get accountability through ownership. And you get ownership from people by giving them choice. An example is if I want them to achieve X, then I say, hey, listen, we're trying to achieve X. Here's why it's good for everybody, you, me, our clients, etc. What can you do this week to impact that goal? What are one or two things you think you could do? And let them say, because see, if I'm an owner, you know, most owners believe, including Fortune 500 companies, leadership teams at the board level and everything, they all believe that the people on the front lines know what the goals of the organization are, what the strategic initiatives are. The research shows they do not know. And if they did know, they're not thinking about it. You know, and if you take their values and you put the values up on a wall, they think everybody's living it. No. But so the point is, ownership comes from, accountability comes from ownership, which comes from choice. So you give people choice, and then they choose. Then they feel they're part of the decision-making process. And by the way, the main point I was going to say about the front line is that if they're the ones, the people at the front line are the ones who should be choosing what the initiative of their job is, because they have the most data about the reality of what they're doing and how it impacts people. So anyway, that's what it was. Accountability comes from ownership,
and if not, we have it recorded. All right. I think we're pressed for time. If you have questions, put them up. I'm surprised we didn't get questions. It's probably because you answered everything or I asked it. Let's see. Two key takeaways they can take away about employee performance in their practice, something that'll be helpful. And then just to reiterate on that, Jay's offering us the three perfect gifts that you're going to get by email. It's the how to create the superstar profile, how to create a superstar magnet, and real talent job interview score sheet. So he's been very generous. Hopefully he knows that he did that. As he's giving that to everyone who registered. Yeah, so two key takeaways for everybody.
Yeah, so okay, I was going to say something different about that, but I changed my mind here. Research shows that the #1 need of employees is to be respected. And the #1 development area of bosses is to show respect. So that's just something you can think about a little bit. I would also say that the more you can ask questions and get people to choose their way forward, the more powerful they will be in your business, and the more they're going to want to do. And I can't underestimate or understate the importance of, I created a presentation once called the 5 C's of leadership. And one of the key C's is caring. And that might sound a little airy-fairy. And some people are like, whatever, they do it or they don't, they're out of here if they don't perform. That's, but if you do show people that there's some level of caring, and that you're aware of them and mindful of them, it changes people. Would you rather have, grudging compliance or people that are like willingly giving you their best? So it makes a difference at the bottom line, big time.
Yeah, I agree. All right, tell us a fun fact about Jay, something nobody on here would know. They obviously know you're a golfer.
Yeah. Fun fact, I have 4 daughters. I love it.
More fun.
They're awesome. Well, every woman I ever say that to, they're like, oh my gosh, are you serious? But anyway, no, I have 4 daughters. I love them. They're awesome. That's a fun fact. To me, it's a fun fact.
Yeah.
I knew you were going to ask me that question, and I'm glad you prepared me for that one because, man, I don't like that question. But this is me having just raced a Ferrari, and I got to tell you, man, that is the greatest ever. What's that?
Where'd you do that at?
Vegas. The Vegas.
Okay.
There's a road track in the loop track there. Oh my gosh, man, it's the greatest. Fun fact: I love race cars and driving fast. Love it.
Sweet. Well, thank you so much, Jay. Thank you for everyone that joined. Look for an email to get those 3 perfect gifts. Again, if you don't know me, I'm Alex Valencia, the president and owner of We Do Web Content. We're a content marketing agency for law firms. So if you're not working with us yet, call Jay and make sure he tells you it's okay to work with us. Jay, thank you so much, man. Always a pleasure. Again, you're a great friend. Thanks for offering so much information. Look forward to continue working with you. If you didn't have your questions, please go ahead and send them. Thank you, Danielle, for being on, or I think you came on as Jennifer, and everyone else. Peace and have an amazing day. Thank you all.
Thank you, Alex. Be well, everybody. Be safe.
Bye,
Thank
guys.
you, man.